How have attributes been reworked in Oblivion Remastered, and what do they do now? That's what this video is going to be all about. Now, I assume this sort of video will be helpful to 3 different types of people. If you have never played Oblivion before, then I'm going to help you understand what attributes do and how to kind of build characters that make sense. If you have played Oblivion before, but you didn't really know what attributes did, then it's probably good to actually learn what they finally do. And if you did play Oblivion before, but you maybe haven't looked into what changed in Remastered, then this video will also be good for you. So let's talk all about attributes then. Strength is the first attribute we're going to talk about, and we can already see some fairly large changes have been made. The 5 carry weight has remained totally unchanged. The 0.5% damage to all melee attacks has been changed to all melee attacks except for short swords and daggers. It no longer gives 1 fatigue and instead gives 2/3 of your strength as life. This means that strength doesn't affect short swords and daggers and is now a decent source of some early game health. Speaking of health, endurance has received another substantial update. Now, endurance gives 4/3 of your endurance as health. That has nothing to do with the next modifier, and all it means is that endurance will always give you a flat amount of HP, so it will still be effective in the early game. The big change to endurance comes from the amount of life you get per level. Under the old system, you would take a snapshot of your endurance and you would get that much life per level. So if, for example, you got 3 health going into level 2 from endurance, that amount would not increase no matter how much you increased your endurance. Under the new system, it retroactively updates the amount of health you get every single level if you increase your endurance. Meaning, under the new system, you just get HP equal to your level minus 1 times 10% endurance. Meaning at level 11, this modifier will give you 100% of your endurance as extra life, in addition to the 4/3 of endurance from its base effect. The last thing they did is remove the 1 fatigue you get from endurance. That's gone completely. Instead, you now get out of combat health regeneration from endurance. So what this means for health is strength users can now stack strength in order to get enough life in the early game to not get one shot and can avoid having to put points into endurance. Everybody can actually avoid putting points into endurance in the early game so long as you're not getting one shot. All you need to do is put points into endurance later in the game and you'll get all the health you would have had for putting those early points in endurance in the old system. This does help out characters who don't have high base endurance later in the game because they won't be as punished for missing those hits on health at their early levels. This also means that health pools later into the game will just generally be bigger. Of course, with endurance giving us some out of combat health regen, this makes you significantly less reliant on using other forms of healing, and this does allow you to play maybe once without using restoration in order to top yourself off between fights. Now, as we move on to all the mana changes, the first thing we need to talk about is intelligence. Technically, on paper, intelligence has received no changes. It has gone from increasing mana by 2 to increasing mana still by 2. The difference here that has gone unlisted is that mana regeneration is no longer affected by your total mana at all. This of course means that increasing intelligence gives you absolutely no increase to your mana regeneration. Like every YouTuber does, I just need to remind people that if you're enjoying this video, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, and make sure to leave a comment down below. If I get anything wrong here, make sure to leave a comment down below so I can update and inform everybody about that. Willpower has seen another large rework. Instead of giving 1 fatigue, it now gives 2.7 fatigue. Instead of mana regeneration being based on your total mana, it is now based entirely on willpower. Willpower increases your base mana regeneration. The amount of willpower you have is directly the amount of mana regeneration that you have. So as we talk about mana regenerations in their totality, your base mana regeneration is your willpower. If you go down to 0 willpower, you will not have any mana regeneration. Increasing your mana will not give you more mana regeneration. I'm hammering that home because it has worked the opposite for the longest time, and it does not work like that anymore, so you just need to realize that. Low to mid mana characters will see a considerable increase to their amount of mana regeneration, and characters will generally restore mana faster all game until late game so long as they're putting points into willpower. Past about 350 mana, you will start regenerating less if you have about about 100 willpower, but willpower will stack above 100 to continue to increase your mana regeneration. This, of course, means that you can no longer sacrifice or keep your willpower low if you want to use mana abilities that often. Now let's talk about agility and finish talking about the fatigue changes. Agility is yet another attribute which has seen a change to every single aspect about it. It used to increase bow damage by 0.5%. Now it increases bow, dagger, and short sword damage by 0.5%. It has lost its 1 fatigue and its decreased chance to be staggered because stagger doesn't actually work the way it used to at all. Instead, it now increases your fatigue regeneration by a flat amount per agility. It does seem right now that the only 2 sources of fatigue regeneration are the base amount and agility, and that's literally the only way to do it. So, taken in their totality, the fatigue changes are that you no longer get 1 fatigue increase per agility, strength, endurance, and willpower. You now only get 2.7 fatigue per point of willpower. Fatigue no longer has any effect on damage other than if you're at 0 fatigue and are doing basic attacks, they will do significantly less damage. Fatigue regeneration is no longer a flat amount that is unincreasable. It is now a flat amount plus a certain amount based on your total agility. Lastly, in the old system, if you were out of fatigue and took fatigue damage from any source, your character would collapse on the ground and would only pick themselves back up after you reach 0 fatigue again. Now the system works that if you ever run out of fatigue due to fatigue damage from an attack or spell, you will go into a staggered state and then recover 40% of your total fatigue. That's how it works for both you and for your opponents. Now, this does mean that fatigue damage, both that your opponents do and that you do, is actually significantly less valuable than it was in the game beforehand, whereas it was possible to effectively lock opponents out of ever being able to take another action again. Now that is pretty much impossible to do, and the amount of time that they will spend in the staggered state is really not that long compared to the collapsed state. Onto the speed attribute. It hasn't actually received any changes directly that I've seen, but because of changes into the base game, speed has become much more valuable. Enemies will generally run slower and have the ability to sprint. They can sprint towards you or they can sprint away from you. This means if you don't invest in speed, you can constantly fight enemies that will run away from you faster than you can catch, really annoyingly. And it also means you can have enemies that run up to you really quickly. But if you do invest in speed, when enemies aren't sprinting, they can't really catch up to you as easily as they can due to their reduced regular running speed. This does allow speed to give you the ability to kite enemies and to chase them a lot better, so speed is definitely more valuable than it was before, but how much more valuable I think is up for debate. On to personality, we can just describe what it does. It increases the base disposition of NPCs. Each 4 points of personality gives you 1 base disposition. It improves your ability to haggle prices, and at very, very, very high amounts of personality, you can make enemies not even want to attack you. At about 180 personality, you can make it so animals don't want to attack you. Nothing has seemingly changed with personality, which does mean that unless you're role-playing, it's really not that strong of a stat. Like personality, luck doesn't actually seem to have any changes going into the remaster, but a lot of people don't know what luck does, so I'm just going to tell everybody what luck does. 40% of your luck is added into every single skill's base effects. Now this will not activate perks or anything like that, it will only do the base effect of a skill. So for example, the 1.5% damage you get from blades to blade weapons will be affected by luck, but again, it won't activate perks or anything like that. Of course, this only affects skills, not attributes. So you're getting acrobatics and armor, you're not getting strength. I don't know why some people think it affects your other attributes. Luck will reduce the chances of a repair hammer breaking or a lockpick breaking. In the arena, your luck will add to the amount of health that your gladiator that you bet on has. Mehrunes Razor is an item that has an instant kill chance equal to 5% of your luck. Lastly, there are a lot of small little effects that are hard to determine, but because they're very small and little, I guarantee you that they're really not impacting the game that much. If something was to impact the game in any large degree, people would know about it and they'd be able to figure it out. Now, as we start to wrap up, Bethesda tends to not like people knowing all the intricacies of their game, so it takes a lot of testing and it takes a lot of work to figure things out because they often hide all their numbers in the game engine, which makes it impossible to figure things out on your own. So with lots of testing comes people like Shine Spark here, who was able to put together this guide that saved me a lot of time. And I just wanted to say that in addition to my testing, I used his testing, which made this able to do. So I just wanted to give a shout out here for that. With that said, thank you all for watching. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all, everybody. And as always, I hope you all have a great rest of your day.